the communication ecosystem of a university is complex. There are numerous stakeholders, each with very different needs. The responsibility for every communicative act always lies with those who produce it and the institution that conveys it. In this context, generative artificial intelligence tools can provide real support. They can reduce the workload for certain repetitive tasks, help improve the quality of texts that are difficult to read, and highlight inconsistencies that might be missed when working under pressure. But the key point is this: they can only do so if those using them know exactly what they are, what they can do, and above all, what they can't do. Let's start from him. Let's begin with a non-technical description of artificial intelligence. A generative artificial intelligence system based on so-called large language models is a tool trained on vast amounts of text, which has learned to predict which word is most likely to follow the previous one. This training enables it to produce new texts that are coherent, grammatically correct, and appropriate to the type of request the machine receives. In practice, this means we can ask it to rewrite a bureaucratic text in clearer language, adapt to communication for a specific audience, international students, people with disabilities, families, check whether one document is consistent with another, or structure FAQs based on recurring questions. In all these cases, the tool works on the text. It does not reason in the human sense of the word. It does not independently verify facts, and it does not know the specific context of your institution. It produces plausible outputs that must be validated by those responsible for the message. We have said that a generative artificial intelligence system does not know your university, it does not know the name of your student portal, it does not know the deadlines in your academic calendar, it does not have access to the current academic regulations, and it does not know if a procedure has changed, for example last week. If you use it without providing this information, it produces texts that seem correct but may not actually be so. An incorrect date, an outdated regulatory reference, a procedure described in a plausible way but not matching what your university actually requires. This is not an occasional flaw of the system, it is a structural feature of language models that fundamentally affects how they must be used. The quality of the result depends on the quality of the information you provide as input. This is called anchoring to context or contextual grounding, and it is the essential condition for making good use of artificial intelligence. Bearing this in mind, let's see where artificial intelligence can actually support university communication. The first area is support for writing, drafts of press releases, simplification of bureaucratic texts, and adaptation of the language register for different categories of recipients. This is the most immediate application, provided that the output is always checked before being sent. The second area is the structuring of information, organising FAQs, extracting key points from lengthy documents, and creating structured summaries. This is very useful for making complex content accessible. The third area is checking informational consistency, comparing versions of the same document across different channels, identifying contradictory information or missing updates. This is perhaps the area where artificial intelligence adds the most value with the least risk, because the results must always be reviewed by a person. The fourth area is communication personalization, adapting messages for international students, people with disabilities, and working students. This area requires particular care. An artificial intelligence that is not properly calibrated can introduce biases, prejudices, or inappropriate simplifications. So, how can this tool be used responsibly? In this course, we adopt 3 operational principles. The first is the principle of human supervision. Every output from artificial intelligence intended for institutional communication must be reviewed by a person before being sent. The more relevant or sensitive the message is, the more carefully it must be reviewed. The second is the principle of transparency. Anyone receiving a communication has the right to know whether that communication was produced or mediated by artificial intelligence. It doesn't mean adding a technical note to every email. It means having clear rules on the use of generative tools within your institution. The third is the principle of anchoring to context. Artificial intelligence produces useful results only when it's provided with the necessary information relating to the specific context, reference documents, current procedures, the target audience. Without this anchoring, the risk of errors is high. 3 principles. Not to limit the use of artificial intelligence, but to prevent efficiency or speed from replacing responsibility. There is a question we need to ask ourselves. What kind of professionals do we become depending on how we use this tool? Those who use artificial intelligence without thoroughly verifying the outputs do not just gain efficiency. They gradually delegate their own professional expertise. If a lecturer systematically relies on artificial intelligence to construct feedback, over time they risk losing the ability to truly understand their students. An office that uses artificial intelligence without checking the content it generates ends up losing control over the quality of its communications. Artificial intelligence amplifies the skills of those who know how to use it, but it cannot replace the critical judgment of the communicator. And this judgment is either exercised or lost every time one decides whether or not to delegate. Let's try to sum up this lesson. We have seen that generative artificial intelligence systems can support university communication in 4 concrete areas: drafting, structuring, consistency checking, and personalization. But this support only works if those who use it apply 3 principles: human supervision, transparency, and anchoring to context, and only if they remain aware that communication responsibility is not transferred to the tool, but always remains with the person and the institution that communicates.